Another way to approach extensions on chords is to convert your major 7 chord into a major 6 chord. And that's a very easy conversion as well. This is the E major 7 chord from the previous video. The 7th of this chord, or major 7th of this chord, is on the B string. You may recall that I started with the root on that string, and then I converted that triad into a major 7 chord. Well, if we lower that note one more step, a whole step this time rather than a half step, 2 frets, we now have the 6th of the chord. So my major 7 can very easily convert to a major 6. And once again, we have a way of creating motion where there is no motion just by that one movement within the chord. Again, very effective. And when we go to the first inversion of our E major 7 chord, our 7th is now on the G string. I'm going to lower that note by a fret. I'm going to lower that note by 2 frets. So this is an E major 6. Now you're already noticing that some of these shapes seem recycled from the previous video, and they are. And that can become a point of confusion. Part of the problem that we have with these chords is major 6 chords are the very same 4 notes as a minor 7 chord. An E major 6 chord is spelled E, G sharp, B, and C sharp. If we start that group of notes on the C sharp, E, G sharp, B is actually a C sharp minor 7 chord. So these are again points of confusion. If we take them relative to the 7th chord or the major 7 chord that we're starting on in this particular video and converting them, I think that will help you to see them as major 6 chords. So again, major 7, major 6, major 7, and major 6. The next major 7 voicing we had with the 5th on the bottom. And if we lower the 7, which is on the high E string now, again a very simple fingering with one finger. So major 7, major 6. So to review those, E major 7, E major 6, E major 7, E major 6, E major 7, E major 6. And the final inversion was this. And the 7th is now the bottom of this 4-note structure. The 4th string, we'll lower that by a whole step. Now, this particular shape, as I mentioned before, might look the most familiar of all those. This is a C sharp minor 7 chord from the root. The root of that chord is in fact the 6th of the E major 6 chord. So if we put the E below it, I think it sounds like an E major sound. Kind of mixing some different extensions. And if we go back to some of the things that I introduced in the first video, we'll put the 9th in place of the root over those major chords. Could we do the same thing with the 6 chords or the major 6 chords? Replace the root with a 9th. And at that point, we would have a 6-9 chord. Some of those voicings sound good and some don't. It just kind of depends on which note is on bottom and the way the other notes are configured above it. So here's E major 7. Here was the E major 9 I used in the previous video. Back to E major 7, E6. Now, here's my root. If I raise that root by a whole step and keep the other... Is there anything wrong with that? No. I've got the 9th on the bottom. Not so bad, right? So major, major 6, major 9, major 6, 9, back to the major 7. I could even put the triad in and do something like that. If I go to the first inversion, there was our first inversion, major 7. There was the major 6. You may remember that I used this as the E major 9, back to E major 7, back to E major 6. Interesting motion in that group. If we move on up here, I'm so used to playing this in F that I keep wanting to move up a fret. Sorry about that. E major 7, E major 6. This was major 7 and I raised the root. There's an E major 9. If I put that note in, now I've got major 6 with the 9th in it. So a 6-9 chord. Up here, major 7, major 6. This was the major 9 I used. And that would be a 6-9. So all of these chords can be used over an E triad, E major 6, E major 7. When you're playing behind a soloist, you have to be very careful because all of this melodic motion you're creating can conflict with what the soloist is doing. So these might be the kinds of things you would do for fills. They might be the kinds of things you would do between phrases as a soloist is performing, when that soloist pauses for a moment. When the vocal phrase pauses, you might play some of these kinds of movements as a fill rather than a single note fill that you might be accustomed to playing. You could use some chord fills. Now there's also connecting chords, passing chords that are chromatic. As of right now, we've just looked at diatonic material. I have one more set of tricks that we'll use to kind of complete this, and I'll put that into a third video.